Hi, everyone. You can hear me very well in the back? All right. Last year, around the same time, Linda Northrup gave a keynote here at SATURN and gave an incredible one where she talked about reflections on software architecture history. And a pointed question was asked by someone I shouldn't mention, George Fairbanks. And I paraphrase. He said, Linda, if you had a magic wand, what would you have used it for to do more to advance the software architecture field? And what's critical about Linda's response here was that she pointed to her chest with a fist bump as a sign of regret. And she said, I would change how we would handle the debate between Agile and architecture. And as she elaborated, I paraphrased your answer. As she elaborated, I had a brief out-of-body moment where I looked back at my very short career, and I could only remember a world where I grew up in both architecture and Agile together. I don't know what happened before. And I thought, maybe I should explore this story a little bit more just to see what she really, really meant by that gesture. So here it is. So everybody knows this, around 2001, February 12th, according to Wikipedia, a group of really good software professionals, established software professionals, got together, mated, and gave the world baby Agile. It was, from the beginning, stamped with a manifesto that really had good values of how to develop software. And one of the good things that they've adopted is that they said, we are not only going to accommodate change, we're going to embrace it. Around the same time, after a good high school years, rigorous in math and physics and logic, I finally got introduced to programming by none else than Miss Ada Lovelace herself. That was my first programming language. Around the same time also, literally, if you look at Mary Shaw and Clemens, they call it the golden age of software architecture. It was supposed to take off and become the popular practice driving how we develop software. And I became a little bit better at what I do. I can develop a full-blown program. I now know 2 or 3 languages by 2004, so I decided to sign up for Mr. Architecture Bootcamp. And that's when I started to get on the notion of style. You know, putting a tie on and so on. Architecture styles, desired patterns, and so on and so forth. So that is around the same time that I had a friend. His name is Ahmed Suzuki. And in 2004, he literally brought architecture to my doorstep. He was a friend, colleague, lab mate, and a roommate. And he decided that Agile is going to be his career from then on. Ahmed moved on to do a PhD in the field, wrote a book, started a certification organization, now leads a big team of 2,000 people at Riot Games, preaching or practicing what he preaches in terms of Agile philosophy. So I moved in around 2004 also into this Agile neighborhood. Now, we hit it off right off the bat. I am extremely fascinated. Agile's got game. I even play doubles sometimes. I started to do pair programming, test-driven development, Post-its all over. I only know how to work with Post-its. So that was really, really good. And through my friend, I now got introduced to the larger Agile community. And around 2006, Agile 2006 in Minneapolis, 2007 in Washington, D.C., I'm meeting now the bulk, not just the select few, the good ones. And I meet few that I can only describe as fashion zealots. How do I describe them? They are MBA-like folks, non-very technical background folks that are now more than the typical Agile, you know, the extreme programming, test-driven development, you know, type of Agile advocate. And what was very alarming, at least as I now reflect, is the established software knowledge is lacking or is thrown out as roles of the Agile become just a little bit muddied in terms of the need to have an established software background. So a debate has started, and I become more aware of it around 2006. It is around the same time I attended my first SATURN in Pittsburgh. So now I become aware of there is a larger software leadership community, and there is this debate with some of the Agile and early, I think, adopters around, and a debate that in retrospect, in my opinion, looks not very dissimilar to what we had in the last election here in the US. And in my career, this concept of alternative things, alternative meanings to words that I have experienced clearly. The word pivot, for instance. It was a cover-up for a failed design. And you couldn't now punish a manager or see consequences of a very concrete failed design choice that you made. The word emergent architecture was used to sabotage certain roles that were not needed in the team, or cover up for lack of planning or lack of understanding the incremental value we should develop to a customer. The technical debt became moral norm. I've seen places where incompetence or inexperience became normal because of technical debt. It's normal to just accrue technical debt. And at the onset of it, you see the original, the first picture, the original Agile architecture now, after a few years, is decaying. That's based on the manifesto, is decaying. Agile has become a slogan. Its spirit is basically you could literally just go ahead and bury it. So there was these oh shit moments that were happening, like whispered all these years. What is this non-feature stuff that's causing us to always not deliver value to the customer? It was whispered, now it's becoming a lot more prominent. And I use oh shit because I've been in programs that at least three, that were a clear result of a conversation of oh shit moment. And the whole program started so we can fix it. Now don't get me wrong, the original intent has always been one that is good. The original, I think, pioneers have always, it's, you know, when you pick up the cronies and the zealots on the way that you get to have problems. And that's why I put some quotes here of folks that really got together in 2001 and they got together again in 2011 and reflected on the goods and the bads. So as I reflected on this, so now we have, we're pretty much back to square one, where when we're reflecting on what Linda said about that regret, yeah, we had more or less about a decade that somewhat impacted the adoption, the popularization of software architecture, the practice of software architecture, because of this non-feature stuff, which has always been what architecture was about. The non-feature stuff, the non-functional stuff, and so on. Now, I leave you with this. And I've never thought about this before last year, never. I've lived in both worlds and tried to be good for my both friends. Now that I reflected on it, Agile started by good architects who wanted to develop software better, or better software in a better ways. And the only way that you can get the value of Agile, the true value of Agile, is by those who care about architecture, period. That is true for Agile. That is true for design thinking. That is true for the MVP and lean startup approaches that are now creeping in into our software development practices. It's true for both as well. The true value that we can get from these new approaches of how to develop software can only be achieved with how much care they give to architecture. And architecture is me, and architecture is you. So let's keep this in mind as we embrace Agile or any other development approach as we move forward. Thank you.